Hours before sunrise over the central United States, the world was still asleep. But at Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, nothing felt normal. Floodlights burned through the fog. Armed security units stood motionless at every gate. And deep inside a reinforced hangar, one of the most expensive weapons ever built sat waiting. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, an aircraft worth $1.157 billion. But tonight, its value was not money, it was timing. Because somewhere on the other side of the world, a narrow strip of water was about to decide the future of global energy. And one pilot had been chosen to change that equation. The Strait of Hormuz, at its narrowest point, only 21 miles wide. The practical shipping lanes, even tighter, roughly 2 miles in each direction. And through this corridor, more than 17 million barrels of oil move every single day under normal conditions. But for the last several weeks, nothing had been normal. Following the escalation of Operation Epic Fury, which began on February 28, 2026, Iranian forces and the IRGC Navy had expanded a layered pressure campaign across the strait. Fast attack boats patrolled in swarms. Naval mines were seeded into shipping lanes. Coastal anti-ship missile batteries were activated. And deep underground, hardened tunnel bases stored the weapons designed to keep the waterway shut. Diplomacy hadn't fully collapsed. A proposed 45-day ceasefire was reportedly under discussion, but on the military timeline, events were moving faster than negotiators could react. President Trump had issued Iran an ultimatum: reopen Hormuz. Tehran rejected it. That created a narrow and dangerous window. And inside that window, a single order was issued. No speeches, no announcements, just 5 words. Neutralize the coastal missile network. Inside the cockpit preparation area, a pilot stood quietly. Callsign SPECTRE. Portrayed as a seasoned B-2 aircraft commander with more than 2,000 flight hours, including multiple long-duration combat sorties. Women have flown the B-2 in real U.S. Air Force service, and this character reflects that reality. But tonight, her identity didn't matter. What mattered was this. She was about to fly one of the most advanced stealth platforms ever built into the most heavily monitored air defense region in the world. A senior officer stepped beside her. "Target window is tight," he said. "You go in clean, or you don't go in at all." Spectre nodded once. No fear visible, but inside that silence, pressure was building. Because Iran's publicly known defense network was not a single radar or a single missile battery. It was a layered system. Search radars, tracking radars, mobile launchers, command posts, and overlapping engagement zones. The S-300 PMU-2, with an engagement reach often described around 150 kilometers. The indigenous Bavar 373. Surveillance nodes stretched across the entire southern coastline. In that environment, conventional aircraft would face serious risk. The B-2 Spirit was different. 172-foot wingspan, a crew of 2, a ceiling near 50,000 feet, an unrefueled range of approximately 6,000 nautical miles, and a payload capacity of up to 40,000 pounds. Built for one task above all others: to enter airspace that other aircraft might never survive. A quiet voice broke the cockpit silence. Systems green, navigation aligned, stealth profile active. The crew chief finished the last walk-around, then gave the traditional salute. Spectre climbed the ladder and disappeared into the cockpit. Engines began to hum. 4 General Electric F118 turbofans buried deep inside the wing structure to reduce radar and infrared signature. No loud roar, just a low, controlled force, like the aircraft was waking up slowly. Then came clearance. "Spectre, you are cleared for departure." The bomber moved, slow at first, then faster, and finally, it lifted into the night sky without hesitation. No fireworks, no attention, just disappearance. Over the Atlantic, darkness stretched endlessly. Inside the cockpit, life became mechanical. Checklists, fuel calculations, tanker timing, threat updates. The crew compartment offered roughly 25 square feet of usable space. Inside, a CES 2 ejection seats, a folding cot, a microwave oven, and a chemical toilet. Not glamorous, just functional. This is strategic aviation stripped down to necessity. Hours passed. One pilot managed systems and navigation. The other took brief recovery intervals. Food was reheated. Checklists were revisited. Then, weather began to interfere. A band of turbulence forced the refueling track to shift. Nothing dramatic enough to abort, but enough to tighten the schedule. A faint signal appeared ahead. A KC-135 tanker, just a floating point of light in the darkness. The approach was delicate. Too high, no connection. Too low, unstable airflow. Too fast, separation risk. The B-2 closed in. Steady, precise, silent. The first alignment was slightly off. A brief correction call came over the radio. Spectre eased lower, recentered, and tried again. Then, contact. Thousands of pounds of fuel flowed into the bomber. This moment changed everything, because now the mission extended deeper, farther into hostile space, and closer to a point of no return. Spectre adjusted her gloves slightly. No words spoken, only one thought. Now it's real. The bomber climbed higher. Near 50,000 feet, the air became thin, cold, and absolutely silent. Below, the Middle East slowly approached. And this is where the B-2 earns its reputation. Stealth doesn't mean invisible, it means uncertain. And uncertainty is the most dangerous thing in air defense. Inside Iranian airspace networks, radar stations continued scanning. Long-range systems rotated constantly. Operators monitored screens filled with clutter, civilian signals, atmospheric noise, ghost returns. Nothing unusual, or at least nothing confirmed. In underground command centers, IRGC operators worked under dim red lighting. Multiple radar feeds merged into a single picture. One operator paused. A faint return appeared on his screen, then vanished. He leaned closer. "Track again," he ordered. The system re-scanned. Nothing. Just empty sky. A supervisor dismissed it. Probably atmospheric interference over the water. That decision would matter later. If this kind of grounded military analysis is what you come to YouTube for, subscribe now, because what comes next is the moment everything changes. Meanwhile, 40,000 feet above them, Spectre was approaching the target coordinates. The Strait of Hormuz appeared ahead, a thin ribbon of dark water, cargo ships frozen far below, coastal lights flickering along the Iranian shoreline, and somewhere hidden in that coastline, missile systems waited. Spectre's display changed. Target corridor entered. Weapons armed. JDAM systems activated. The mission objective was clear: coastal missile support nodes, launch storage areas, command shelters near the shoreline. Not symbolic targets, not regime centers, functional ones, designed to temporarily degrade control of the strait and create a window for maritime movement. Tonight's strike package: GBU-31 JDAMs, 2,000-pound GPS-guided precision weapons, each one assigned to a specific coordinate, selected not for spectacle, but for surgical accuracy against hardened coastal firing positions. The bomber descended slightly into optimal release altitude. Inside the cockpit, tension peaked, because even inside a stealth aircraft, the final minutes always feel exposed. Then, a system alert blinked. Crosswind shift. Small, but enough to affect the release window. Spectre adjusted instantly. Second pilot confirmed. Release window tightening. One minor navigation correction flashed across the display. Silence returned. A deep mechanical sound echoed through the aircraft. The bomb bay doors opened. For the first time in the mission, the aircraft's stealth profile was slightly exposed. This is one of the most vulnerable moments for any stealth platform. The aircraft's shape changes. Timing becomes unforgiving. Inside the bay, 16 GBU-31 JDAMS. Coordinates aligned. Release sequence checked. Wind data updated. Navigation cross-verified. Spectre's gloved hand moved to the consent switch. Countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The bombs released, not randomly, but in a timed, controlled sequence. 16 JDAMs, each one falling silently into darkness, each one assigned to a different piece of the blockade network. For a few seconds, nothing changed. Then, the coastline erupted. One explosion, then another, then a chain of near-simultaneous detonations stitched across the entire coastal defense belt. Hardened shelters collapsed inward. Fuel and ammunition ignited. Launcher positions disappeared in dust and fire. Storage revetments detonated, secondary explosions rolling outward into the darkness, suggesting stored missiles and propellant had been caught on the ground. Shockwaves rolled across the shoreline. The water reflected firelight like a burning mirror. Only now did Iranian operators begin to understand what was happening. The first unmistakable signatures were not the bomber. They were the impacts. Inside command centers, alarms erupted instantly. "We are under attack! Where is the aircraft? Track it now!" Warning nets activated. Radios spiked with overlapping reports. One controller called for interceptors. Another demanded confirmation that the earlier radar return, the one dismissed as interference, was real. Air defense crews searched desperately for the platform responsible. But reaction time is everything in air warfare, and in this case, reaction came after release. One officer shouted, "This was not cruise missiles, this was air-delivered." Another responded, "Then where is the aircraft?" No answer came, because the B-2 was already turning away. Spectre banked the aircraft gently. No panic, no rush, just execution. The bomber exited the strike corridor exactly as it entered, silent, invisible, controlled. Behind her, the coastline continued burning, and over Hormuz, the silence began to change. Within minutes of the strike, intelligence networks around the world lit up. Satellite feeds confirmed multiple impact points across the coastal defense belt. Shipping authorities paused movement through parts of the strait. Naval units adjusted positions. Oil markets reacted instantly, because even a temporary disruption in Hormuz affects global energy stability. But the strike did not end the crisis. It did something more realistic and more strategically important. It created a temporary degradation in Iran's local anti-ship network near the strait, enough to widen operational space for minesweeping, for naval escort movements, for surveillance flights, and for the first cautious return of commercial shipping traffic. In strategic terms, even partial clearance matters when the world is watching oil prices and shipping insurance hour by hour. It also changed the diplomatic picture. A strike like this, imagined through the lens of public military logic, would send two signals at once. First, that the United States can still reach defended targets despite layered radar and missile coverage. Second, that Washington may be keeping pressure tightly focused on blockade-enabling military infrastructure rather than pursuing unlimited escalation. Every adversary watching received the same message. Hardened positions don't guarantee safety when the platform delivering the weapons was never detected. After nearly 37 hours in the air, Whiteman Air Force Base reappeared below. No celebration, no announcement, just landing lights cutting through Missouri darkness. The B-2 touched down smoothly, engines powered down. The mission was complete. Spectre stepped down the ladder into cold night air. Ground crew stood waiting below, silent, respectful, because they understood something simple. Not every mission is about destruction. Some are about control. The Strait of Hormuz was still there. The water still moved. but something had shifted. For a brief window in time, the corridor was no longer held shut. And in modern warfare, even a few hours of control can change everything. The B-2 Spirit was designed for moments exactly like this. Moments when detection comes too late, when distance no longer offers safety, and when silence becomes the most powerful weapon of all. For more grounded military analysis built on public reporting and real-world capability, subscribe now, because in modern warfare, the most dangerous moment is not the strike, it's the silence after it.